Welcome to Jubilee 2025 Pilgrims of Hope, a podcast from the Catholic Courier celebrating this milestone year in the Universal Church, with stories of faith and hope from around the Diocese of Rochester. The parish of St. Catherine of Siena Menden is proud to sponsor this podcast featuring our parishioners, the Pettee family. We are a diverse community devoted to serving God and extending the hands and heart of Jesus to our larger community. We welcome new members to journey with us. For more information, visit saintcath.org. Here's your host, Gina Capellazzi, digital content producer at the Catholic Courier.
Although the canonization of Blessed Carlo Acutis is being rescheduled due to the April 21st passing of Pope Francis, the Vatican is going forward with the Jubilee of Teenagers, which is welcoming Catholics ages 12 to 17 to Rome April 25th to the 27th. An Italian teenager who will become the first millennial saint, Blessed Acutis used his knowledge of computers and video games to create a website about Eucharistic miracles. Since his death in 2006 at the age of 15, he has become a role model for Catholic teens and young adults. Also, as part of the Jubilee year 2025, the Church is honoring persons with disabilities at the Vatican April 28th to the 30th. Here in the Diocese of Rochester, high school seniors were recognized with the Hands of Christ Awards during 3 ceremonies in early February. Among the 2025 recipients was Cameron Pettee, a senior at Victor High School and a member of St. Catherine of Siena Church in Menden. Cameron has cerebral palsy, but that has not stopped him from doing the things that teenagers his age do. Cameron is nonverbal and uses a computer to speak. He and his parents, Mike and Julie, recently joined Catholic Courier staff writer Mike Latona at St. Catherine's in Menden to share what life has been like for Cameron and how their faith has sustained them through the highs and lows of his disability. So I now turn things over to Mike.
Thanks, Gina. I'm honored to be here today with a very special guest, Cameron Pettee, who is only a few days shy as we speak of his 18th birthday. And I'm equally honored to be here with his parents and his sister. And we're really impressed with the fact that Cameron was able to earn the Diocesan Hands of Christ Award just a little while ago, earlier this spring, end of winter actually. And he's here to talk about how that all came about. And he's a special person, so we're looking really forward to this. Cameron, it's a pleasure to be here with you today. And the first thing I wanted to ask you about was how it felt to get the Hands of Christ Award.
I was surprised to get the Hands of Christ Award. I felt like God was celebrating that I try to bring kids together that never go to church closer to Him. Not every teenager goes to church. But every teenager deserves to know that Jesus suffered for their sins.
What's important to you about your Catholic faith, Cameron?
Forgiveness is the most important thing in my Catholic faith because everyone sins. I feel protected from my sins because Jesus died on the cross for me.
Now you've got graduation from Victor High School right around the corner here. Very impressive. And I was wondering if you could tell me a little about your future plans.
After high school, I want to go to St. John Fisher College and enroll in their legal studies program. I want to be a lawyer. I like to defend what I believe is right.
What are some of your favorite activities, Cameron?
I love watching and playing sports. I play unified bowling and basketball for Victor High School. I also play Challenger baseball in Victor and Webster and Challenger bowling in Webster. My favorite professional teams are the Boston Red Sox, Boston Celtics, and the New England Patriots. I also love to go to Rochester Red Wings and Mercs games.
You like your Boston teams, that's for sure. Can you tell me a little bit about the importance of having your family in your life?
My family is important in my life because they keep pushing me to do my best. They help me to do what other kids do. It just looks a little different for me. My sister and I pick on each other, but we still love each other.
I can relate. We're so impressed with all you've accomplished, Cameron. There's so many things that you have done, that you are doing, that you want to be doing. Can you tell me a little about the determination that you've had to do things like anybody else, despite the kind of disability that you have?
When I was born, the doctors said I might not make it, but through God's grace I thrived. I think God is using me to show others perseverance. That's what inspires me.
So accompanying Cameron today are his parents, Mike and Julie, and we'd like to find out a little from them about what life has been like with this wonderful person over the previous 18 years. And thanks for being here today. And I was wondering if you could both tell me a little more about Cameron's medical condition, how soon you found out, either before or after he was born, and kind of take us through the years as to what his medical life has been like.
Sure. So Julie had a pretty normal pregnancy with Cameron. We were excited. We had kind of waited to figure out whether or not he was, whether he's going to be a boy or a girl. So it was a build up to that day. But when we got to the hospital, things kind of slowed down a little bit, and he ended up
not arriving for like over 24 hours.
Yeah, there was a long wait before Cameron finally joined us. But when I was in the operating room with Julie and Cameron came out, we could tell that there was a problem. That was the first real knowledge we had that there was a problem. And the doctors took about 20 minutes to get Cameron to breathe. And it was, amazing how many doctors kind of came in and floated in out of who knows where, but came in to help Cameron and get him going. We didn't know quite what was going on, but after 20 minutes, he became stable. And of course, we had a lot of questions for the doctors. But it was pretty universal that the doctors didn't want to really tell us at that time, what the future was going to hold for Cameron. We knew that there was going to be trouble, but we didn't know what kind of trouble.
For the first 3 days of his life, too, they put him on a cooling therapy. So he was in an incubator with just a diaper on. And because of not breathing, he had a brain injury. So that's what this cooling therapy was meant to help slow down that injury. And we weren't able to hold him for the first 3 days. So the minute I was able to hold him, I just broke out in tears. Like all we could do is peek in at him. And the doctors at that time in the hospital, all they could tell us was that the brain injury was consistent with with cerebral palsy, and they didn't know what that would look like for Cameron. They didn't know what milestones or might be impacted. So as a baby, we didn't really know what he could or couldn't do. We just took it one day at a time. That's
Yeah, we were in the hospital for about a month, I would say, before we were able to bring him home. And there was we were very happy to have him home and kind of in our control, let's say. We had to establish a routine like every parent has to with a young one at home. And there were challenges with that along the way. But I would say some of those, first times you have to start letting go for other people were difficult. And by that, what I mean is, there are things, different therapies and things of that nature where other experts have to come in and help you and assist you as parents. And so there's times where, you in your own routine as a parent, you get comfortable with something, but other people helping you can be scary at the beginning, quite frankly. And so that's been, I would say, something we've experienced throughout Cameron's almost 18 years so far is going off to like a pre-K type situation, and having to hand him over to another group of adults and say, here, take care of him. Cameron spent some time at Daystar, right, in Rochester.
When they were still over on Lochnavar Street, I think, in Pittsford, operating out of a ranch house.
Yes, I've been.
And they had some wonderful, wonderful caregivers there. So he spent a good year and a half there, and that enabled us to kind of keep a semblance of like work and, a work-life balance. They used to call him the mayor at Daystar because people would come in the front door and he would be calling out to them. Cameron is nonverbal, non-mobile, but he is able to speak with the assistance of this, it's called a smart box. He does all of his schoolwork on it. So shortly after he left Daystar, he went on to CP Rochester, and that's where he did like early intervention and pre-K. And they hooked us up with a communication device, and he is right on par with his peers intellectually. So he wants to do what any 17 or 18-year-old would do. And intellectually, he is on par with them with regard to all of his schoolwork. After he left CP Rochester, he transferred into the Victor schools and went to kindergarten, and that's where he stayed. And we've had wonderful, wonderful aides and teachers, and everybody in the district has been wonderful with him.
So Cameron goes to school every day?
Every day, mainstreamed in a regular classroom. And he's grown up with a set of kids, and they understand him, and they're wonderful with him.
And I was going to ask about that, what kind of social interactions he has. It's clear that in one regard he's different from everybody else in the room, but in a lot of ways he's the same, it seems. And it sounds like they treat him as an equal and not as somebody that is different.
Right.
Yeah, that was, one of my biggest concerns was, what does it mean for me to have a kid with special needs, to be the parent of a kid with special needs? And I think what I've come to learn is that, although I wouldn't want to see him struggle, we don't want to see anyone struggle. What I've noticed is how many people kind of come toward Cameron, flow toward him naturally, want to help, want to assist.
Or just engage.
And just engage with him. And so, I was mentioning before how we've had to give up a little bit through the raising of Cameron, of other people coming into his life, and kind of letting go and letting him become his own individual person. And it's been, I think, really interesting to see how many people are willing to step into that space and help him out, help us out. I think it's helped form who he is today in a lot of ways. I remember a particular time where Cameron came home from school, and I don't know, it must have been 6th or 7th grade, and he said, "Dad, I want to run for class president." And I remember thinking, in my own life, I would never want to do such a thing. But how could I hold that back from someone who does want to do it? And so Cameron ran and pulled together a team and did all the work required, and he ended up being named the president, elected as the president of one of his 7th grade class. And so it was one of those moments where I, as the parent, learned from Cameron that it's not always your vision of what life can hold. It needs to be the vision of each individual person, and that plan that God gives for each one of us is reflected in how those people, what those people do throughout their lives to engage in other areas of society.
It's very clear to me that there's good communication with Cameron from everybody who comes into his life. And I would think part of that, and I don't know if everybody realizes it, maybe they do, that he understands everything that's coming in, right?
Yes.
Even if he doesn't verbally express it. I don't want to, even now I'm trying to be careful, Cameron, not to talk past you. And I think it sounds like you have everybody has a nice awareness of how to communicate with him, which is, I would think, very important.
We found too that the kids at school from a very early age, if he didn't have his device to be able to talk back to them, they would devise their own ways to talk to him. They would come up and say, Cameron, how was your weekend? Was it good or bad? And they'd have them tap their hands. Or they'd say, raise your hand if you like, X versus Y kind of thing. So it's interesting to me that kids his own age have found unique ways to engage with him that we as adults didn't.
Yeah, we had to learn from these people. I think that's my big takeaway is how much we've learned from Cameron as he's grown up.
Right.
And from other kids his age that have had to adapt to a different, set of situations to overcome those things.
I'm just trying to visualize the daily routine in terms of does he go on a school bus? And there obviously has to be extra care involved, and he has aides at school who get him into the classroom. Could you describe his daily routine a little bit in that regard?
Yeah, I mean, we wake up very early. We jump on the bus, and there's folks that take care of and help Cameron through his day.
He always has a one-on-one at school.
We've had a one-on-one, as long as he's been in the school system that's there to help him in, all those needs.
He does have some special education teachers that might push in because sometimes they do have to modify work for him in order to, for him to be able to do it all online. But for the most part, he's passed all of his Regents exams. He's gonna get a Regents diploma in June, and he's able to do all of his schoolwork. It's amazing what he's able to do.
Yes, he was absolutely adamant about getting that Regents diploma, and he wants to really show that people who have disabilities are able to fit into society in their own way, and they shouldn't be unchallenged. They need to be challenged so that their life is as typical as it possibly can be. And so there's always that balance that needs to be struck. Again, what he wants to do with his life and what he's done with his life so far has made us very proud as parents, but it's also exactly what we would expect out of any human life. You get to choose what you do and the paths that you take, and sometimes they look a little bit different. Sometimes they're on 4 wheels, not on 2 legs, but we get there through perseverance, deciding what we want to do, setting goals for ourselves, and working hard to get there.
Could you tell me a little bit, I think you've told me a lot about the highs. There have to be tough times too. What are some of the tough times?
Well, we just went through a pretty tough time. He has a pump in his body that delivers medicine to him to help with the tone in his legs because he tends to get really tight. And he's had that for 7 years. And so recently we had to go have that replaced because the battery wears out. So we did that in February, thinking it's just a routine surgery. Well then, as a result of that, he ended up having a spinal fluid leak after we got him home from the hospital. So then we had to take him back to have that taken care of because the medicine goes from this pump through a line into his spinal column. So we no sooner got that fixed and he came home and started having fevers, pretty high fevers. And so we went back and the pump ended up being infected. So in the span of about 4 to 6 weeks, He's had 3 surgeries. We're just getting back to normal health, being able to go back to school, catching up on schoolwork, and
and this is
trying to finish out his senior year.
Yeah, and it's in senior year, and he had there's of course of all sorts of fun things that happened during a senior year, and unfortunately Cameron had to miss a senior trip out to Boston, which I'm sure he would have really enjoyed.
Oh, Boston.
Yeah.
So he was, troubled by that, but
Health comes first.
health comes first.
And so as I'm having such a hard time with all of this, and was quite emotional over the last few weeks, he's the one who told me, trust in Jesus. Jesus has a plan.
So he's guiding you.
He's guiding me.
Along the lines of his faith and your family's faith, do you go to both Transfiguration and St. Catherine's since they're clustered?
Yes, yeah.
Could you tell me a little about Cameron? I know we've talked about his involvement at public school, but what has he done in the parishes that may have led to his being given the Hands of Christ award?
Yeah, so he's just participated in youth group and in all of the sacrament preps. He's a big supporter of anything he loves to volunteer, I guess is what I'm trying to say. He was inducted in his National Honor Society last year, and as part of that, he's had to do some volunteer work. He's worked as a greeter, I think, last year at some church functions at Transfiguration. And he also, it belongs to a group called Young Life in Victor, which one of his aides at school runs. And so it's sort of like a Bible study for the high school, for the teenagers. And he's been to Young Life Camp last summer, which he absolutely loved. And he was able to do some rafting. What else did he do? What is that?
Parasailing. Cameron went parasailing with his mom, which was pretty amazing.
I wasn't holding on to him. His aide was holding on to him up in the parasailing, but then I was able to parasail as well. So he was able to do things that he's never been able to do. He's just my really religious kid. He has a very strong faith, and I hate to say this, but stronger, I think, than mine and my husband's. And my father has a very strong faith, as did Mike's mother. And so I think he's emulating them in a lot of ways.
I can't even begin to picture how you're all going to feel on graduation day.
Yeah, it's going to be a very important day. Again, all those people that have helped along the way have gotten him to this place of, accomplishing something that's real and important. It's going to be very meaningful to him, but I think it's going to be very meaningful to us because, I remember back to those first few minutes after he was born to kind of take us back, and things weren't looking so hot then. The doctors couldn't really tell us. In fact, they told us, in those moments that you better go see him and spend as much time as you can because he might not make it. Right. And so a difficult thing for any parent to hear in that moment where you're expecting joy, you're expecting all sorts of wonderful things. But I've said this a lot recently. I can't imagine a life any different than the one we have now. And it would have scared me to think about it when Cameron was born, but now I'm glad I have it. It's been a great learning experience. And we're never done learning.
People from the outside looking in may think that what you've had put on your plate is a burden all I've heard from you the whole time is what a blessing he is. Maybe you could talk about that a little bit.
Yeah. He's brought people into our lives that we probably never would have met. Some wonderful, wonderful people. And just his perseverance and his determination to just do what everybody else does is kind of an inspiration to us. I mean, my husband and I were both very, what do you call it, like low-key kind of people. We don't have big personalities. We're very introverted is what I should say. And I think Cameron's had to bring out the extrovert in us. And Cameron very much brings people together, like just our family and all of his friends. He loves to just laugh and have a good time and be around people, and I think that's helped us as well.
Absolutely.
What breaks my heart is sometimes he'll say to me, "I'm sorry I have so many needs, Mom," or "I'm sorry you have to help me." There was a time right before high school where he would, say, "I'm sorry I'm a burden." And we'd have to talk him through those things and tell him he's not a burden, that he's here for a reason, and how much he's brought into our lives and the lives of people around him.
I've asked a lot of questions. You've given wonderful answers. It's a pleasure knowing more about Cameron on a personal level. I've been a fan of his from afar for a good portion of my life. I've known Cameron's parents personally, and Julie's sister Laura is good friends of me and my wife. And so it's a real privilege to be here today doing this. Before we sign off, so to speak, is there anything else about, and I'm sure you could talk for days about Cameron, but is there anything about him, your family, anything else that we haven't brought up yet? I'd like to make mention of his sister, so maybe you could talk about how the two of them kind of get along, or sometimes maybe not get along, as siblings are prone to do.
Yeah, so Cameron has a younger sister named Delaney, and she's 14 years old. She's an 8th grader at Victor. They're not in the same school. He's in high school and she's in the junior high. But they have a typical teenage relationship right now. They like to pick on each other. It's funny to hear them converse sometimes. And then there's other times where I'll find them being sweet with each other, like Delaney helping him, or asking him questions about his day, or them putting their heads together about their NCAA brackets. We have a friendly competition going on. But since we brought Delaney home from the hospital that very first day, and we put her on the floor in her bouncy seat, and if I had to run out of the room to get her bottle or something, I'd say, "Cameron, you're responsible to watch her for me." And he'd just sit there and just stare at her until until I came back, right? So he was her little guardian for years when she was smaller.
I think I'd be remiss if I didn't ask this question, but did you have concerns about having another child?
Yeah, I think we did. I think we waited a while to make sure that Cameron was in a good place, and that we were comfortable with him and, his needs. And so I think we waited a good 3 or 4 years.
Yeah, there's certainly a lot of anxiety with, as we got closer to the delivery date, because what happened with Cameron snuck up on us. And but there's no way to be prepared for that other than to just have confidence that it's God's plan, and that you have the strength to get through it, and everything's going to be okay in the end anyways.
And from what we've talked about here, Delaney's an athlete and never experienced any of the same kind of tendencies.
No. Delaney is doing well in her academic studies and doing well in her sports.
Does Cameron go to her softball games?
Every once in a while, if it's nice and warm out, he enjoys watching.
Oh, he's saying no.
I have nothing else, but again, we could talk for hours and hours and hours. We're friends from a long time ago, and it's really been an honor to be here today and have this conversation.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining the Courier's Jubilee 2025 Pilgrims of Hope podcast. You can learn more about Jubilee Year 2025 by clicking on the links in the description below this video. Or if you're listening to the audio-only version, you can find the links in the description below your podcast player. We'll have another episode for you on May 22nd.